Welcome to the Winging It F1 podcast. This is very early for us. Probably a new record, and probably a new record for the least waffling before we've hit record, because we've got to do stuff because we're
Yeah.
adults. Anyway, uh, yeah, bus trips and stuff. But it's the Hungarian Grand
Work.
Prix review. Work, whatever that is. Hungarian Grand Prix review. What a mad race! It was still a couple of days ago. But I'm still so, I guess, hyped about it, about everything that happened. I forgot to ask, how are you guys doing? So I'll ask that now. How are you guys
I'm
doing?
doing wonderfully considering it's early. It's not actually that early. The sun's out. But yeah, I'm doing actually quite good. And yeah, it was a very, very, very good race. Very enjoyable. Brilliant.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I feel quite bad saying it's early because it's like past 8 o'clock. Like it's really not that bad on the scale of professional lives. But yeah, I
Humans.
just just what a fantastic race. I feel as much as I kind of came into F1 as a Hamilton fan. I'm also just a sports fan, and seeing that kind of
You
race
weren't
that you just
saying
know
that during the race.
that
At
well,
the
no,
start, at least.
as I was watching it, I was, just kind of feeling quite privileged to be able to watch that, and because you're watching it, I was listening to it, but knowing that it's, that is just going to be legendary, and people are going to be talking about that for years and years and years after F1. After the season. So, yeah, I think just being able to witness that, I did, feel quite lucky with that, and I was willing to let the results slide for that, and the fact that it was a very likable new race winner as well. It wasn't, it was so. Yeah, it was just a really good afternoon.
Yeah, the 111th race winner in F1. I can't remember who we chose after Perez won. Sorry, because I remember we chose. I think one of us chose Sainz. Yeah, but
I think we chose Ocon.
I don't.
Even though he
really.
came second in that race, and Sakirin
Uh,
arguably should have won it if Perez had been taken out at lap one.
But where do we think it was won? Because obviously there's a number of factors. Do we think one factor was bigger than the other? Was it Alonso's battle with Hamilton? Was it Ocon himself? Was it Aston Martin? Well, obviously, say if Vettel didn't get the score five, we'll get onto that. Was it the slow pit stop, or was it everything?
Three things that you just said. It's
Lap one chaos.
yeah, lap one chaos, which Ocon used his wet weather prowess and just intellect to keep his nose clean, which obviously worked wonders. Two is the fact that even though they were second, they still were the first to go into the pits. So they were ballsy in that position because they were so out of position that you'd think, oh, hold second, just be as normal as possible. But they were ballsy. They went for the gamble. They pitted for the dry tyres. And then a combination of Alonso's epic defense and Sebastian Vettel locking the rears ever so slightly as he went into his pit box, meaning he went slightly too far down.
Yeah, I think if I was going to pick one moment, it'd be the Alonso, because I feel like that decided, I guess, like as that's the last thing out of the list Freddie just made. That's the last thing, and it really did felt like if Lewis had got past Alonso at lap 50 to 55, then he still would have won the race despite everything else that had happened. So I'd say that, but the others are, were major contributing factors when half the group wipes out at turn one, including like 4 of the top 5 in the championship.
And I think we're all gonna agree, but Ocon drove absolutely brilliantly in that position for the first time, just like Gasly at Monza last year. For over 60 laps, he held Vettel, 4-time world champion behind Vettel himself, said Ocon didn't really make a mistake. And he just delivered under the pressure. And it was just a fantastic drive. And, it's not often these chances come up for these midfield drivers in F1 these days. So you have to deliver when you get those chances, unlike Lance Stroll last year. And Ocon did it.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to say that.
First win since his only win in GP3, his first GP3 win was his first ever GP3 race, and that's his first win since then in May 2015. So I mean, I'm sure he's won on like GT Sport or something, but that's his first actual single-seater victory since 2015. So fair play to him. That was very, very well done. Very good performance. I'm really happy for him, actually. I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, so am I. And I think you kind of saw that from a lot of the drivers and what Hamilton put up. And I know him and Stroll are very close as well. But yeah, I think you just saw that from all the drivers and looking at obviously where he comes from. And it's not your traditional motorsport family, and kind of is he had to make a lot of sacrifices, and his family had to make a lot of sacrifices, and then get under the wing of Mercedes and Toto to be able to progress to a point where he'd be able to enter F1. Then having such a good season with Force India Racing Point, I can't remember which ended the season as Racing Point, didn't they? And then kind of the whole paddock seemingly being up in arms that he wasn't on the grid for the next season, but he wasn't. A difficult last year against Ricciardo, and where it kind of just, it wasn't really the return that many people expected. And then this year with Alonso coming in, and he has actually pulled his finger out and made a much better fist of it this year, and got rewarded with a big contract, and then hadn't really performed as well since that big contract came in. And then to take the first win, it's I was so pleased for him. And as you say, it was completely deserved, and he just drove what he needed to do. That's kind of the end of it, and it's just fantastic.
100%. And if anyone else wants to say anything on Ocon, do jump in. But one thing that, as we've already talked about, that helped Ocon was his teammate Fernando Alonso. That battle with Hamilton. I mean, there's two standout battles in F1's turbo hybrid era for me, or three now. Hamilton, Rosberg, Bahrain, and Leclerc versus Verstappen, Silverstone 2019. And I think this is up there with that. And that was phenomenal. I think it was 10 or 11 laps of just pure out-and-out racing between two world champions, corner after, for the first four corners, lap after lap. And it was brilliant. How much did you guys enjoy that?
Oh, it was fantastic, wasn't it? It was excellent. And you can compare it to those two battles by saying, and with this one, Alonso was in a car that was a second a lap slower on the same tyre and had a tyre offset anyway. And he was doing that kind of defence. Fair play to Fernando Alonso for keeping Hamilton behind for that long. It was brilliant. It was just heart and mouth stuff. It was really just insanity to watch. I couldn't quite believe that he kept him behind so much.
Yeah.
Like, he would push him out, and you could just see there were bits where Hamilton would get on the outside, and Alonso, you'd just be like, well, Alonso's not going to let him around here, and he just didn't. And then Alonso would then sweep back to the left before turn 3. Just like, that was always going to happen. And it's just like, there was a moment in turn 1 where Hamilton looked to be trying to get a switchback, so Alonso just didn't accelerate off the corner, and then Hamilton had to back off, and then Alonso accelerated. And I thought that the awareness of your surroundings to sort of risk a move like that, and the skill of the racecraft there, hats off, mate. Fantastic.
It's just car placement. It was just perfect every single time. He just put it exactly where he needed it to be. And the kind of field that Hamilton was working through, it's not bad races, but he was just able to scythe through it. And then you just come up against Alonso, and just how fantastic is it to see someone who kind of came in 2007, like, to see that again was quite nice. But it's that's just one of the best drives, one of the best kind of textbook performances of defensive driving that we've seen ever.
The racecraft is just off the scale. How smart he was, as Freddie says, his awareness. And Hamilton was like 3.5 seconds faster when he was catching up per lap. So you'd think that he would breeze by, and he did when he eventually got past and then went past Sainz. So I don't really know how he did it. It was just
Um,
unbelievable.
Alonso has said some stuff afterwards that maybe Hamilton's lines in
Third
the
Red
final
Bull
two
driver,
corners.
he said.
He said that some of Hamilton's lines were a little bit off in the final two corners before the DRS, and that he sort of figured it out afterwards and got a bit better at getting closer to him. And then he used that on Carlos Sainz, and we saw him dispatch Carlos Sainz very quickly down the main straight. So there is that. But I mean, how much of that is true or not, we don't know. I mean, Hamilton still set pole, so I don't think his final set. I don't think he's got some lines that are a little bit wrong, to be honest. So I think it's just a mixture of that, of maybe just dirty air in some parts of the track that help out a little bit more too.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 8 wins at Hungary. I don't think he's, that.
Yeah, he's not missing a line, is he?
Yeah, but I think that, I don't know, to me it just feels like that was Alonso having a bit of fun, really, and afterwards. And I guess also, maybe not so much for turn 1, but Lewis, I don't know. I guess the championship would have been in his mind that it would have been better to get a 5th place than wipe out when Verstappen was out of the, or far down the order. So I think that probably played into it a little bit, but that's compared to the pace disadvantage that Alonso had, that's nothing, and it shouldn't take away anything from Alonso's performance and the battle as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about Hamilton. He's been bumped up to second after the disqualification for Vettel. Where did he lose the race? That's the question.
Oh, I wonder where. Was it when they didn't pit for dry tyres for the standing restart?
I don't think it was a mistake, that.
No, I don't think it was a mistake. I think it's, if you do that and you're in first, you're on a track where track position is key. It's a really difficult call to make. That's why I think the Ocon call for that was fantastic.
But what I was going to say was, what I mean by that is, if he comes in first, then he's got to wait for the whole field to go by.
There were gaps, though.
I think
there were gaps that were formed by other teams trying to be sporting for themselves. Like Alonso was backing everyone up for Ocon.
Because if he gets an unsafe release, gets a drive-through penalty or 10-second time penalty or whatever, or gets damaged, as we saw with Mazepin and Raikkonen, that's a bigger risk than being cautious. So I don't think it was that bad of a mistake. I really don't.
Well, I feel
it's
like
still a better situation to be like 10th with dry tyres when everyone else is there, rather than 6 or 7 seconds behind 15th, 13th. But it's like, it would have been a mess. But I mean, that's not what they foresaw. They didn't choose not to do it because of that, but it's what's happened. And they sort of ended up in a bit of a lose-lose situation because they were the first car, but they never seemed to contemplate dry tyres at all. And I mean, I don't necessarily think if they really thought there was going to be more rain, but in their heart of hearts, I think they just said that to Hamilton just to like calm him down a little bit, to say we thought there'd be more rain. But yeah, either way, that is where the race was lost. I mean, we can say maybe it wasn't the best idea or not, but it is where Hamilton lost the lead and ended up 15th. End of fact.
I think the mistake was not rolling out of the pit lane on the restart for the formation lap. In fact, every driver didn't do this. They didn't go out on dry tyres because you can change tyres, but no one chose to. That was a bigger mistake for me.
Yes, that is definitely a bigger mistake. But again, everyone made the same mistakes. You kind of get why that's happened. It's the kind of idea of it being like, we were only being under a red flag for about 15-20 minutes. The chances of it being super dry are really limited, and it was, but that's the thing.
I don't know. I feel like at that point you've not been out for the rest of the track. You can see it, but you're not kind of driven around it. So I kind of understand why they didn't do that, or maybe on the back. I mean, Giovinazzi went on to dries at the end of the formation lap for the first start and then switch back.
That actually was a gamble, though. That wasn't built in any science or anything. That was just Let's do it.
But the switchback was quite a bad and costly move. But I don't think Ocon going out, especially Ocon going out on intermediates for the restart. I think it'd be a pretty ballsy move to gamble away that track position. I do think it was quite a big mistake actually. For Hamilton, I don't know whether they just weren't looking out for it or weren't thinking about it, but if they had gone in, I think they would have, he would have been within the top 10 for definite, and then I think he would have won. Which in many ways, I'm kind of glad that he didn't, because it set up the race, but in to be such a classic. But in terms of Mercedes maximising what they could have got out of it, I think that's the point where and drivers were calling it, or every other driver. Russell said that they were all going to pit a fair few corners before they came in. So I think as I say, I don't know whether they just weren't thinking about it or what, but it
was just
they were thinking about it. They were thinking about it. It's just that speak
to them, are you?
You are on the restart. You are on the restart because the race has started. And that's so they were able to speak on that one. They weren't able to speak in obviously the formation lap before lap 1, but on this one they are. So
all right. I thought you weren't for some reason.
Yeah, I didn't.
No, it's fair enough. It's fair enough that you thought that. Because it was so close to the start of the race, and it's what the Haas got penalties for last year. But yeah, it's just like they were discussing like, oh, Hamilton going, oh, it's dry here. It's a dry line at turn 2, dry line at turn 3. Oh, it's dry at turn 4. And they're like, okay, Lewis, copy that. It's a standing start, da-di-da-di-da. Just going through the procedures. But so it was kind of like there was a discussion about it being dry, but I think they just value the track position of first place at a track where we've seen from Alonso that it is a tricky track to overtake if you position your car pretty well, especially if you're Hamilton in the car with the car behind you, a car that qualified over a second off you, then you take track position really. But yeah, it's all well and good with hindsight's 2020. It's a wonderful thing, and we can look back and go, "Oh, everyone pitted," but like, it was so bizarre that everyone pitted. You've got to just think back and just be like, "Oh my god, this is the weirdest thing in the world." We got one car on the grid, like the chances of that happening, even like with a corner to go on that lap, were very difficult to predict anyway.
There's about 1 in 1,070 F1 races, I reckon, the chances of that happening, because it is just, when that was happening, I was going mad. I could not believe what I was seeing. By himself.
Yeah, I understand that, but every other driver did, and every other driver made the right decision to do it. So, it just...
If the car in front of you does it, it's easier to do it, isn't it?
But still, people were calling it before they got to that stage, before they knew what other people were doing, and
people with less to lose is my thing, though. It's just
they shouldn't
George Russell
they shouldn't kind of be making those
sixth,
decisions out of kind of fear. Like if they think it's the right decision, they should back it.
And that's the thing. They thought it was the right decision to try and hold first place.
Yeah, and that's just where I think it was quite a big mistake, and it came back to haunt them. But as I say, it set up an amazing race. So I'm glad they did it, really.
Hamilton's drive itself was excellent, especially when he changed to the hard tyres after about 20 laps, where he was stuck behind Schumacher, Verstappen, Ricciardo. That battle, he really came alive on those tyres, and that's what put him in a position to even have a chance of winning. Then the Mercedes classically not outfoxed, I guess. They used the pace of the car and strategy to do something aggressive, which was nice to see. And I think really after that mistake, as Adam points out, he didn't do much wrong, Hamilton, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think he put a foot wrong after that. And the outlap and then the next lap on the hard tyres to overhaul Verstappen and Ricciardo was just mega. It was just absolutely mega. And from there, because it was kind of bad team radio, Lewis, when he was stuck behind, stuck at the back of the pack and behind Giovinazzi, I think, at the start of the race, and just wasn't into it at all. And it was as much as obviously advantage it gave the car and gave him some clear air. I think psychological boost he got from that, from going onto the hard tyres and just putting in some fast times, then getting ahead of Verstappen. I think that was absolutely massive as well, because that kind of, you could hear on the team radio that it changed, the kind of way he was looking at the race. So, I think that shouldn't be underestimated either.
Yeah.
Well. I'm trying to think of a moment where there was a mistake, and I cannot think of a mistake on track by Lewis Hamilton from his comeback
around the final sector, according to Alonso.
70
mistakes.
Yeah. Well, 65 because he got past Sainz in the end. He learned it. But I don't know. It's just the fact. Even when we got to the final lap, I was surprised at how close he was to Vettel and Ocon.
He was still 3 seconds faster on those.
Yeah, exactly. And the drop off on the mediums was kind of, they stayed relatively really good performance, and then there was a bit more of a cliff. The hards had such a kind of single line sort of drop off on a graph. It was so sort of ordinary for the hards to sort of manage it, whereas the mediums were a much trickier tyre this weekend, and he managed that so well whilst fighting, whilst pushing like there's no tomorrow. And he drove a fantastic race, to be honest.
Yeah, and his qualifying was very good as well. I think it's one of his most underrated laps, but we've got a lot to talk about. So, so let's talk about Vettel. The scorecard, what Aston Martin are appealing the decision by the stewards to, who said that he didn't have enough fuel in his car to take a 1 litre fuel sample. So, I mean, it's pretty clear cut. Some people are saying, "Oh, why are they doing this?" But it happened to Hamilton at the McLaren Spain 2012 and Canada 1 year. I can remember when we
that was qualifying. That was slightly different.
Qualifying, I guess, but
it's
the same rule.
Same principle.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Not having. So it's not something that comes up often, but it's a pretty slam dunk disqualification, I think.
Unfortunately, yes. I get what people are complaining about it, because as a rule, they only need really a pipette's worth of fuel to test it. They don't need a litre. They can do it with a teaspoon. But it's like, maybe that kind of needs to be looked at in terms of like, well, do we need to be so aggressive with our requirements post-race? Because it does make this kind of situation feel a little bit null and a bit crap, frankly. But it's again, it's a slam dunk rule, and the rule has to be respected. They haven't actually officially appealed yet as we record this. They've only done an intention to appeal, which means they can keep the car in the FIA seals and stuff like that, and it means they can keep the fuel tank, crucially, as is, so they can say, look, at there's more fuel in there. I think that because they're just trying to wait for the system to sort of ooze out all the fuel, I think, from the engine. But it's kind of like, at the end of the day, if from the traditional format of picking it up there isn't enough fuel, then that's it, really, I'm afraid. And it's a real shame, because I really wanted Vettel to get that podium, and I was really happy that he did.
Yeah, and it's really gutting for Vettel. It's it was, especially after the kind of LGBTQ plus stand he'd made, given Hungary's, or the Hungarian government's really negative stand on that. I thought that was extremely admirable, and something that I think the German football team tried to do when they were playing in Hungary, or playing in Munich against Hungary, and were blocked by UEFA. So, and it just, it was such a shame. Like, he drove a really good race. I mean, it was a bit like Ocon in the sense that, he got through the carnage at the start and was just there, but he still had to take advantage of that, and he did. And it's just, I just felt like such a shame for him. At least he got the moment on the podium, I guess. It wasn't like immediately after, but it's just such a shame. But as you both said, it's not, you can't really debate it. Like, it's a rule. It's blatantly clear what you've got to do post race, and it's not, they can't start changing these rules like mid season, just straight after a race because a popular driver got a podium. It's it just didn't work like that, and and I just think it's harsh but clear what they say.
When you park up on track afterwards, then it's like a red rag to a bull to the stewards to say, check us to see if we've got enough fuel. It's that kind of thing. They could have avoided being randomly spot checked to be looked at the fuel, but the stewards were like, oh, well, we'll give a look at that then because he's stopped on track.
And do you think he could have completed the lap with 300 millilitres of fuel?
Yeah.
All right.
But either way, who knows? They would have probably checked anyway. But I don't know. I feel like they only checked like 3 or 4 cars.
They only check a few cars.
I don't know. I might be completely wrong. You might be right.
I don't know either.
Yeah, all of them, to be fair.
Yeah. It's something you'd take extra care on if you see a car stopped on track if you're an FIA technical delegate.
Because they're very clever, even though they give reprimands for wearing T-shirts during the national anthem.
Like Christmas Day for them, really.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, Vettel's drive for me, it was every bit as good as, well, not every bit. It was a few small errors, just like with the pit stop and a couple lock-ups there where he was maybe out of position when he couldn't really get close enough to mount and attack. But I kind of felt he had a bit more pace, or just with the nature of the track, he wasn't able to use it. But yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely, the car was set up for the race more than it was for qualifying, because that Aston Martin didn't look like it deserved to be in Q3, to be honest, but Vettel got it there. And I think, he did look like he had a little bit more pace in the race, but Ocon had the pace where he needed to keep him sort of at the back end of DRS, which meant that if Vettel was 2-3 tenths closer, there would have been a move to turn 2 and he would have sailed away really for a few laps, and Hamilton would have won the race because Alonso wouldn't have fought so hard. So it's a few little errors probably cost the win, but at the end of the day, they still gained a second place on the road.
Yeah, and they were pushing hard all race, which is exactly what we want to see. These race-long battles between two drivers. I don't think there was more than 2 seconds, or not often there was more than 2 seconds splitting them throughout the 60-odd laps they were fighting for. So,
and the only point it was really 2 seconds was around the pit stop phases. And that was probably crucially where it needed to be at the 1.5, arguably 1 second point. If you look at Hamilton's, we've already discussed his undercut on Verstappen and Ricciardo. The power in that undercut was exceptionally strong. So it would have been, and it was there for Vettel. I think no one expected it to be that close for Vettel and Ocon because of Ocon's gap to Vettel on those medium tire on the drop off there. He managed it better, did Ocon, because he's in the clean air. So Vettel arguably needs to be a little bit closer there, for probably about 2 or 3 laps rather than 1 fast lap, that kind of thing, to try and get close to then do a better undercut. But they're all little things that contribute to not winning the race, unfortunately. And the fuel.
And the big one being the fuel that gets you disqualified.
Well, if you take the lead, then you can stop pushing a bit more and you can save the fuel. But I mean, that's a little thing.
Yeah.
Again,
and the reason both Vettel and Ocon were in that position was because of the mayhem at turn 1. Because the Bottas and Stroll, Bottas remarkably taken out both Red Bulls by hitting Norris and hit Verstappen, and then Bottas made a secondary impact with Sergio Perez. He just couldn't make it up. Leclerc's called it a bowling game. I think Ferrari's Matteo Binotto has called it stupid, and I'd have to agree. It was stupid.
Yeah. It wasn't like he missed his braking point. He broke late. It kind of it's not like the worst thing that's ever happened on an F1 track, but it's just like because he did it at the start, right behind the race leaders bar Hamilton, then it's just like it was bad. There's nothing really. I don't know. It just feels like there's not really much more to say. Could they have done it from a safety car start? I don't know, but
No.
or,
No, we don't want to see that. We
No.
really don't want to see that.
Then
It shouldn't be a
that's kind of
safety
it,
car
really.
start if the fault is because a driver brakes 30 to 40 meters later than the braking point on the track. That's a massive error. I mean, you can say that he lost downforce because there was a squeeze between a sandwich gap that closed between Verstappen and Norris, which is true. But if you add that to the but like the braking then was still ridiculously late.
I think the sandwiching...
It was like a dry braking zone. That's the thing for me. That's the thing. The sandwich is negligible comparatively, really, compared to how long it took for him to then think it was okay to brake.
I think the sandwiching was kind of the start of the chain reaction because he lifts there and then chooses to get back on the power. I don't know whether he kind of lost his bearings in terms of like how far he was down towards the corner or not, but I feel like it was kind of the sandwiching happens and he lifts off, and then it's just the decision to get back on the power is where it goes wrong, really, because then that was basically where he needed to be braking. So I can kind of see how it came about, but that doesn't excuse it. And he's not a good weather driver. That's what it comes down to. He's he's just, I don't remember him having a good performance in the wet, really, and it's just a massive. I don't know. I mean, to me, it seems I kind of saw it was raining at the start. I thought, oh dear, he's in trouble. But it turns out he wasn't, and to take out that many drivers, I mean, bloody hell. Could have written it.
It was shocking.
What I don't get is how come Bottas got a 5 grid place penalty, which isn't harsh enough, I don't think. I think it should be 10. Why didn't Stroll get a penalty?
Stroll got a 5-place grid penalty.
He has got a penalty. Never mind. Let's move on. No, I mean, thought he didn't.
To be fair, I thought about the Russell incident at Imola, where Nigel said he should get a grid penalty, and me and Freddie said he shouldn't. But I don't know. It's kind of looking at those two incidents. It feels difficult
completely different.
It feels like the Russell one was a slight,
one's braking,
one's sort of like a centimetre issue, whereas the issue with this one was about 30 meters. So that's as an error, that's huge.
Yeah, I'll
the
tell you
error
what
for this
worse.
one
Hamilton's
was so much
collision
bigger.
with Verstappen at the British Grand Prix. That was worse than this.
Wow.
Well, actually, no. Let's not get into that.
No, we don't. Whatever. Do it in isolation.
It caused Verstappen. Yeah, I really wish I didn't say that. That's one of the worst things. Actually, it's not one of the worst things. But,
oh God, what's Nigel
talk about Verstappen's damage. I mean, Red Bull did really well to finish it as much as possible. They're like a World Rallycross crew or something, just jumping on the car in over a 10-minute period, throwing bits, sellotape and parts, everything. I mean, he did well to get 2 points, I think, because Christian Horner said he probably had less downforce than Mick Schumacher.
And the 4th fastest lap.
Which kind of says how bad the Haas is this year. But, I mean, yeah, it's just been pretty unfortunate for Verstappen again.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Not his mistake that crashed into him. And really, honestly, the fact that car made it to the finish is amazing. Really, that's what I'm sort of tipping my hat to.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's just again, it's unlucky, and I mean, I don't know. I guess it was a good race for it to happen, because there were so few finishers. Ultimately, but he did well to get the result, and didn't really feel like you can say much more than that. Although I would say, it came down to Lewis, taking pole position, and Verstappen not really being able to compete there, which we might talk about later.
I don't think he had the car really. 6 tenths.
Well, let's just
quicker in Q2, wasn't
he? Yeah, even his Q2 lap was still what 3 tenths away.
His Q2 lap would have put him front row, but
yeah.
But that's just, that's getting the tyres in the perfect window and so on and so forth. And it's third place was still very good, I think, really, considering he had a crack in his engine. And I mean, they say they can say it doesn't have performance impact, but wow. So I think, who knows where Red Bull are going to be, but they will come back from this, to be honest. They're only 10 points, 8 points behind in the championship, is it?
Yeah, the drivers, yeah.
The swing hasn't actually been as big as it could be.
Yeah. I'll give you 1 minute, Adam, to talk about qualifying. I know you want to talk about it before we get on to Williams. Go.
Yeah, I wish I'd been given a bit more preparation for that, because now it feels just like just a minute, which is some repetition already and some hesitation at the start. But it's
don't deviate.
I just feel like Mercedes have found a way to deal with the Red Bull problem of following them out in qualifying, and it felt like Red Bull kind of recognised that. Really, I don't think they were really up in arms about it as most fans, or most Red Bull fans, to be honest. But it's I think after Silverstone, at Silverstone, we saw Hamilton going out and immediately going on the radio saying, "Oh, look who's gone out behind me," and it was Max Verstappen. And it's been a Red Bull tactic for a while to be following the Mercedes rounds, and Mercedes have found a way to deal with it. And I'm interested to see what happens next time out. But I don't think it's kind of gamesmanship, and I don't think it's the worst thing that we've ever seen in F1 or anything close to that. So, as some people are making it out to be, and I think I quite like the fact that Christine Horner has just said fair play. They've done us there, and next time we'll be back. So I just wanted to say that, really.
Yeah, and Norris, in fact, the Norris started it, then there's 5-second gaps all the way back down to Verstappen and Perez. That's all it was. It happens all the time. People just decided to make a meal out of it this time. So it was exactly the same as any other Q3 session this year. Williams, wow. Nicholas Latifi. Not enough people talk about Latifi. He did better than Russell yesterday on different strategies, but 7th and 8th. It's just incredible, unbelievable.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? Beating McLaren, beat a Red Bull, beat both Alfa Romeos, beat a Haas. Top job. 10 points.
I think it seems like the kind of ultimate George Russell thing, that as soon as he scores points, then Nicholas Latifi scores more than him and finishes.
We've joked about that for ages, haven't we?
Yeah, I thought a few more people were talking about Latifi, but maybe that was just me. It kind of, the one time that Russell does score points in a Williams for the first time ever, and it's overshadowed by his teammate who he's been dominating in qualifying for 2 seasons or 1.5 seasons, and then he goes ahead of him. It's more points in this race than Williams had previously scored, stretching back to Abu Dhabi 2017. Cumulatively, and it's just and the fact that George was kind of willing to sacrifice his race or impede his race to help Latifi, I thought was quality as well, and good second driver material, Mercedes, if you're watching. So he's due to do a tyre test, I think, with them over the summer break, and it's just happy. It's a kind of good news story for Williams, which have been in short supply really for a long while, and it's just it's, as I say, it's kind of happy to see, and a double points finish is exceptional for them, and kind of validates they've been unlucky or made bad calls in a lot of races like this over the last few years. So to come back and finally get it go right and get 10 points out of it is just stunning, really. I'm surprised it went well for them, to be honest.
It is stunning. That's exactly it. And Latifi drove an excellent race. Russell drove an excellent race too. They both understood the necessity for a minimum race time, really. and I think Latifi was lucky Tsunoda was behind him as well. But like, yeah, it was Kevin Magnussen in Hungary last year where he just was like, I'm not going to fight you. I'm going to just drive perfectly, inch perfect for the entire race. You can get past me, please, by all means, Alex Albon, overtake me. That kind of thing. And that's what they were doing. And it was fantastic. Well done, Williams. You deserve those points. Way more than Alfa Romeo. So, yeah. Alfa Romeo did not deserve points.
So pessimistic mistakes.
They made mistakes at the worst race, really, with the unsafe release for Raikkonen. That gave him a 10-second penalty. Then Giovinazzi, when he did pick the slicks, he speeded in the pit lane. But it must have been like quite a bit because he got a 10-second stop and go.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you lock up slicks on a wet track going into the pits, I mean, I can kind of get that, but it's just kind of still just like, yeah, you're still going to get a penalty, mate.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're arguably the biggest losers from Sunday with Red Bull, I guess. Although this Alpha, it'll be harder to get back. So I'd say they are bigger losers. But is there anything else you want to talk about in the next couple of minutes before we wrap up?
I want to tip my hat to Mick Schumacher. Even though he didn't take part in qualifying due to his own mistake, he did a clean race very well, and he got his elbows out in a really fun way.
He did.
I just have fun watching Mick Schumacher.
And
that's really all I want to say.
Sainz was on the podium as well. Yeah, we forgot about that. Well, very sorry, Carlos Sainz.
Sorry, he doesn't watch often.
Coming back from 15th as well.
Yeah, from a crash.
Great job to get to 4th on lap 1, and then to drop back to in the pit lane kerfuffle, and then to then do a major overcut based on his own thinking where Ferrari bid. It was like, no, it was great. Well done, Carlos Sainz.
100%. Yeah, I think
well done us.
Bottas, for all we've slated him, getting on Saturday he was good. If it had been a dry track, then I think that would have been very valuable, having the second place on the grid. And Ricciardo, I felt quite bad for him. In fact, there are quite a few drivers caught up in the crash that I kind of felt like, on another day, if they qualified differently or maybe even worse, then they would have, could have won. So it feels quite, it feels like there are a lot of drivers who could feel quite unlucky, but at the end of the day, that's racing and they'll benefit from it sometimes and other times not. So yeah.
For one glorious moment, for about 5 drivers, they're all in second place. It's like, I'm going to be in second. And it's like, oh no, I've been crashed into. It's quite. I feel bad for him.
It's best we don't talk about Ricciardo today. We might talk about him in the next few weeks, though, along with probably Sergio Perez. We plan to do some kind of big podcast on him.
Pod.
Yeah, don't worry. We are not taking a 3.5-week break. We will probably have 2 or 3 podcasts before Belgium, which will be great for you listeners who I'm sure are enjoying them. Find us at Winging It F1 on Twitter, on iTunes, Spotify and YouTube, at FredCoats1999 on Twitter, at AdamDickinson01, and you don't need to know my Twitter handle. So I think that's it for today. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.